Hi, welcome to class. We're the only two right now, but the other ones will show up eventually, right? I hate my life. I hate my life. And Professor Sunrise Productions! Hello class, Professor Sunrise here. In today's class, we're gonna talk about the European Championship, why I wasn't there. I'm gonna showcase you my guy's deck list, which I would have run. Spoiler alert, I think the deck would have performed pretty well, but more on that later on. So don't forget to like and subscribe, leave some feedback down below, and let's get right into the profile. So, by the way, because I didn't say it in the profile, my ride to the European Championship got very ill right in front of it, right before it, so I didn't really have a chance to find another way to get there. And even the side events I couldn't go to because the one ride I had for the side events, we couldn't fill up the car and we didn't want to pay too much for the ride. So, very bad circumstances, but that's just life. And of course, life and health becomes before even Yu-Gi-Oh! I know it sounds crazy, so stay safe, guys. So ultimately, I decided to still play Brave Virtual, mostly because I still love the deck, and I think I fixed the consistency issue as much as possible. I decided to cut the Punk engine again because while it is super strong going first, and you don't care about the bricks going first, going second, you just need to not see as many bricks, and playing 3 bricks or like 2 bricks and 1 Xiamen, which can be a starter, just to have 3 1-card starters is not really worth it in my opinion. So we cut the Punk engine. Now I'm back at 40 cards clean. The consistency only really lost like 1 or 2% in the chance of seeing a virtual world. The deck still has an 83 to 84% chance to see playable, like seeing a 2-card combo, which is insanely high for virtual worlds. And honestly, the deck would have performed insane. We are still side-flocking opponents in the standby phase, and most of the top decks were not really prepared for that at all. The only real board breakers would hurt us are Super Poly, which we can easily play around depending on the hand, and a Droplet, which the opponent still has to commit a lot to, and then we still have a lot of disruption following that. So honestly, I think the deck would have performed insane, and I'm gonna stick to it. Also, all of the Mystic Minds, which I didn't expect too much, are of course no problem at all for this deck. The deck runs innate 1 Chucha out. A lot of times you can end on 2 Chucha pops, so even in your turn you can still pop a Mystic Mind if they like maybe, for example, the Altergeist Lich, which was in top 4. If they Mystic Mind in my turn and then in their turn and then in my turn they Metaverse me, I can still out the mind no problem. So in all, this would have been an insane meta call in my opinion. And without further ado, let's get into the replay. Of course, the virtual engine, surprise, surprise, nothing changed here. Maxing out every single one of them is super important. Lao can definitely be sided out, and a lot of times I side out 1 Lao actually. Then for the rest of the engine, so only 1 Neon, you don't need more than that. 3 Kowloon, 2 Qinglong, I don't know what this card is here. Let's put it back. 2 Qinglong, 2 Chucha, 1 Janwu. We're still super all in, so in my opinion, playing the Janwu is correct. Yeah, nothing really to say about that. It would have been an insane engine into the meta. Not a lot of people would have expected it. I don't honestly know the Rika matchup too much, but then again, it's not really that representative. But definitely will get you guys updated on that once I've actually tested it against it online. Also, by the way, stay tuned on this channel. I'm gonna make a video series on how to beat Splight, Tier Elements, and also Rika Sun Avalon, just because it's probably gonna get a lot of popularity right now on ladder, and I want you guys and also myself to be able to have the best possible matchup and knowledge against those decks. So stay tuned for that. Yeah, this is the standard Brave standard Virtual World engine. Nothing really too spectacular about that. For the Brave engine, play 3 Enchantress, 2 Ride, 1 Adventure, 1 Griffin, 1 Dracoback. Also pretty standard. I like the second Ride just because you kind of want to hard draw this as well, because that makes it so that you can play around certain board breakers, mostly Super Poly better. Also going second side out 1 of those, just because it's not really needed as much. Depending on the matchup, I do keep it though. For example, against Exo Sisters, I definitely like the Brave engine just because it forces it out so much by itself already. Now for consistency, 3 Pot of Prosperity. This card is insane. Going down on cards makes it so that this is still super consistent and has a 93% chance to see a virtual world name. So I count it as actually just another name. And with 15 names in main deck, it becomes super likely to see playable, which is, of course, what we want to see. And 3 Emergency Teleport to get a virtual world on the field. This card in multiples is still pretty good. This is probably the best way to get a virtual world on the field, apart from Kowloon. But honestly, it's just a little more consistent than Kowloon. It plays through hand traps a little better, though. Of course, hand traps are not really there right now. And even against hand trap, this deck is still insane because it can easily, especially game 1, when your opponent doesn't know that you're side blocking, can play through 2 low impact hand trap like it's nothing, sometimes even 3, and then you can still end on a very disruptive board. Speaking of disruptions, of course, we play the Snow and the Scythe. Both of these cards are insane right now, especially Scythe, as the meta is just not prepared for Scythe deck. A Scythe lockout in the standby phase. So these would have worked insane. Of course, I side these out going second as well. Snow I sometimes keep in against a very slow matchup where Snow is good, but there usually is not one right now. Against Blight, you cannot really afford it to keep that. And then lastly, only 3 droplets as a defensive card. It might seem weird to only have 3 board breakers, but this deck plays through the Elements board like it's nothing. And against Splight boards, the only real good card in the main deck, which is in my opinion main deck worthy, is Droplet, as Dark Ruler just doesn't do enough. And Super Poly I haven't tested enough. I would maybe play this, but then again the space is just not there going first, game 1. And I just want the 3 droplets, which are more than enough. If you draw this plus a good hand, you can break a Splight board quite easily, depending on the variant, of course. But yeah, in my opinion, going first, 3 were more than enough, and then post-side I can up this to 8 board breakers plus Prosperity, which is definitely playable, I would say. It's nothing, it's not like the most optimal thing, but then again, the engine itself is super gassy. It's one of the few decks which can still play Brave, which of course is also super good at breaking boards. So in testing online, it works out quite well against both the Elements and Splight. So for the extra deck, this is also where I was quite unhappy, and I made one or few changes which definitely helped out. But most importantly, going to 40 and cutting the Punk engine made this deck way better. I was 0-10. I'm not kidding. 0-10 on Dueling Book, losing every die roll, and just drawing 2 to 3 bricks going second. I have to pass going second at breaking the board with 2 to 3 cards in hand, which is definitely not something you want to do at all. So cutting the Punk engine just felt the most optimal in my opinion. 1 Beatrice, of course. 1 Enchantress, 1 Cheng-Ying, and 1 Dawn Dragster. This is also where the problem, a little bit of the deck lies in Super Poly, because these are both Blights and you kind of want to end on them. So the opponent can Super Poly into Garura if you have both of these out. You can play around that if you have a hard-drawn Brave engine, and in your standby phase or in your turn, you still send the Scythe of this, and then in your opponent's standby phase you would send the Snow, just so that you get the Scythe lock through, so you can play around the Super Poly with that. Of course, you don't have to make the Dawn Dragster, but it's just a little more safe against like a Caught by the Grave and Impermanence, stuff like that, or just against have that additional out against a potential mine. Of course, Baron is standard, and Cheng-Ying is to out problematic boss monsters. Definitely something you can cut out with Prosperity, and depending on the matchup, also the Dawn Dragster. Then for Synchro 6s, we play the Draw Guys and the Juju. These are also banished off the Prosperity because you don't need them in the turn, of course. Then the Crystal Wing package. This card is insane against the matchups where there are a lot of hand traps, so mostly I built this against Blight. Problem is that this does open up Super Poly on the Baron, so I really don't want to end on Wind Monsters right now next to the Baron, just because Super Poly then opens up the board and crushes me. Same as Chen-Chen. Chen-Chen doesn't really have an application against any of the meta decks right now. It's super bad against all of them, but it's still the boss monster, and in the grind game you just make this. This does play around Droplet in theory, which you can sometimes make if you know the opponent doesn't play Super Poly, because you maybe know their deck or something like that. But overall, you don't really want to end on this, even though you can. And then 1 Vermilion. This is one of the flex spots, and I'm not too sure about it. In theory, this is probably better than a Fan, just because we have the utility of Fan in Cheng-Ying. Outing the fusion monsters of the elements can be done with M7, so we still have that and a rank 6. And Vermilion Dragon Mag gives me a line with Lily plus Qinglong to actually have full combo. So in my opinion, just still the best. And if I don't see it, if I don't have to do the line, I will just Prosperity banish it. Then for Xyz, 1 Break Sword. I make this less, but it's still mandatory in my opinion. 1 M7. This is still an insanely solid card, and sometimes I even make it going first just to have additional follow-up. Because I don't want to go into a Crystal Wing, for example, if I have the resources. Because I don't want to play into Super Poly. You make this, and then you add back a Laulau or a Digi and end with like Lulu, Gigi in hand, plus Qinglong and Grave, plus an Scythe lock. Then 1 Gaia Charge Warrior and 1 Zeus. I did put this in last minute because I was not too sure about it and it overperformed. I made it so much. I really missed the format Zeus. And also, if you think about your first turn board, if you really only have that, like Scythe plus Beatrice, and for example, you have to play through a shit ton of hand traps or whatever reason you don't really have any follow-up, at least putting this on the Beatrice and then attacking and getting into a Zeus gives you one additional turn to get to some resources. Most of the time, this should be enough. Especially because if you don't have any resources, the opponent probably hand-trapped you to death. So the Gaia Charge Warrior came up plenty of times, not only for that, but having a Beatrice without material on the field and just having a Charge Warrior in extra deck feels good. So that's it for the extra deck. The one or two changes I made to it really helped out, but most importantly, the side deck is where it is, because this deck has an atrocious matchup against Exosister and Mathmech, and especially the later one, Mathmech is everywhere right now. So I definitely had to make some changes to it. So I played 3 Ghost Bell to hit both the Exosister trap, the one which banishes and then quick Xyz, and the Mathmech trap, of course. And it worked out insanely well on my testing on locals and online. So I really like that. And then for board breakers, I'll play 2 Dark Ruler, 2 Lava Golem. This should probably be Sphere modes, but I was not too sure about it. In hindsight, I would probably play Sphere modes if I would go on an event right now. But Lava Golems are definitely safe, and the opponent can probably play around those post side, around Sphere modes way better than they can play around Lava Golem. Then for more hate, we play 1 Reboot. You almost always set this in because there are just so many back row cards right now to evenly match. These were 1 Galaxy Cycle and 1 Cosmic, just because Cosmic can also be sided in going first, and Galaxy Cycle can be milled off Beatrice, but this play never really came up. In theory, I thought it was going to be great, so I just put into Evenlies because they're really good against both Exosister and T-Elements, which Exosister being a very hard matchup for me, and T-Elements being kind of easy just because the disruption doesn't really hurt me at all. So I really like that. And then 2 Sanctum for going first. This is a really good card because it just basically hits every deck for 1 turn. And me already playing Scythe, I felt this just made the most sense. This is also very good with the Lancia. This is mostly there for Floowandereeze because my main game plan doesn't really hurt Floowandereeze at all. If I go first and I do full combo, I can be lucky and have Crystal Wing Dawn Drexler Chucho, which is still insane, but a lot of times my opponent would probably just play through that just because they will have a Dark Ruler or something, and just lancing them in the standby phase helps immensely, especially as it turns off evenly, and if they have to not get any resources because they cannot banish, so they lose so much grind game, they cannot evenly me, so they cannot get rid of all of my resources. I guarantee you I will win every game just because I have way more resources than they have in my turn 2 then. And then lastly, for 1-offs, 1 Pankratops, 1 Call By, they're super strong right now against plenty of cards. This against Splite, this against the Elements, and also for going first. Overall, I really like this side deck. The Lancia doesn't really come up a lot because I'm not playing a lot of Floowandereeze, but then again, Floowandereeze is just one spot and it makes the matchup going from bad to good again. So I feel like it's worth it. And also there's like, especially on big tournaments, you will play against a few random decks here and there, and just having that 1 Lancia in is just 1 slot, and I don't really miss anything else, just because the deck only really sides in 5 to 6 cards anyways, sometimes even only 4 or 3, so I don't really see a reason to change things up. So, hope you guys enjoyed this deck profile. Sadly, I couldn't top, and I don't think any virtual player topped as well, to maybe like take a look at the list of them. But I'm still gonna play this deck, the format. I thought about playing Brave Sprite, but with Mystic Mind being everywhere again, or still, I would say, I definitely feel very comfortable on Virtual World, and I feel like the Prosperity and Clean 40 really helped unbrick this deck, and in the format where the hand traps are just really bad, I feel like a deck like this really shines. So, hope you guys enjoyed this profile. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the how to beat Splite, T-Elements, and Rika's Sun Avalon. Hope you have a wonderful day. You guys are dismissed. Class is out. Feel free to leave. Professor Sunrise out. Peace.